And 6 days later, Jesus said, I tell you, this is the way it is. There are some of those who are standing here who won't taste death before they see the empire that God brings come in power. And Jesus took with him Rock and James and John, and he went up on a mountain, and he was transformed before them, and his clothes became dazzling, intensely white, like no launder on earth is able to whiten. And Moses appeared with him, with Elijah, and they were talking to Jesus. And Rock said, Teacher, it's good that we're here. Let us build 3 booths, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. See, he didn't know what he was saying because they were terrified. And suddenly a cloud came and overshadowed them, and there was a voice from the cloud saying, This is my beloved Son. Oh, listen to him. And suddenly, there was no one around them except Jesus alone. And he ordered them strictly not to tell anyone about this until after he had risen from the dead. They seized on this word and were wondering to themselves what risen from the dead meant. And as they were coming down the mountain, they asked him, why do the legal experts say that Elijah must come first? Jesus said, well, if Elijah comes first in order to set everything right, then why it is written that he'll be scorned and suffer many things? I tell you, this is the way it is. Elijah has already come. And they did to him exactly what they wanted, just as it's written about him. And coming down off the mountain, Jesus saw the disciples, and they were arguing with some Pharisees. And when they saw him, they approached him and were astonished and came greeting him. And Jesus said, what were you arguing about with them? And one of the people from the crowd said, Teacher, look, I brought my son to you because he has a deaf and mute spirit. And often it takes hold of him and it seizes him and shakes him and throws him down, and he foams at the mouth and gnashes his teeth. And I asked your disciples to drive it out, but they weren't strong enough. Jesus said, O generation without trust, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to put up with you? Bring him to me. And they brought the boy to Jesus. When the unclean spirit saw him, it seized him, and they threw him in the ground and thrashed him about, and he was foaming at the mouth. Jesus said to his father, how long has this been happening? He said, since childhood, and often it has thrown him into water or fire in order to destroy him. But if you're strong enough, have compassion on us and do something. And Jesus said, if you're strong enough, everything is possible for the one who trusts courageously. The father said, I trust, help my lack of trust. And seeing that the crowd was coming together, Jesus said to the unclean spirit, Unclean spirit, I order you to get out of him and never enter him again. And convulsing the boy and crying out in a loud voice, came out of him. The boy looked so corpse-like. Some were saying, he died. But Jesus grasped his hand and raised him up, and he rose. Now when Jesus was in a house with his disciples, they asked him, why weren't we strong enough to drive it out? And he said, this kind can only be driven out with prayer. And they were going through the region of the 10 cities. And Jesus was teaching his disciples, and he didn't want anyone to know it. And he was telling them, saying, the human one is about to be handed over into human hands. They'll put him to death. And 3 days after being put to death, he will rise. They didn't understand what he was saying, and they were afraid to ask him. Now, when they got into the house in Capernaum, Jesus asked them, so, what were you discussing about on the way? They kept quiet, because on the way they'd been discussing who was the greatest. And Jesus said to them, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be the most important of all will be the slave of all. And sitting down and taking a little child and placing her in their midst, and taking her in her hands, he said, whoever receives one such little child in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but the one who sent me. And John said to him, oh, teacher, we saw someone driving out demons in your name. We tried to stop him because he wasn't following us. Jesus said to him, don't stop him, because no one can do a work of power in my name and soon after pronounce misfortune on me. Whoever isn't against us is for us. Because anyone who gives you a cup of water, because you're under the name of the Anointed One, they definitely won't lose their reward. But if anyone causes one of these little ones who trust to stumble, it would be better for them if a large millstone were tied around their neck and they were thrown into the sea. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It's better for you to enter into life maimed than with 2 hands to go into Gehenna, the unquenchable fire. If your foot causes you to sin, cut it off. It's better for you to enter into life lame than with 2 feet to be dumped into Gehenna. And if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. It's better for you to enter into the empire that God brings with 1 eye than with 2 eyes to be dumped into Gehenna, where the maggot doesn't die and the fire is not quenched. And he said to them, everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if salt loses its ability to preserve, who can restore it? So have salt among yourselves. Be at peace with one another. Oh.